And Dan, do you believe that immigrants take jobs away from Americans? Is that, I mean, obviously you believe that they're putting a massive strain on our social safety net and on taxpayers. But do you believe that illegal immigrants are taking jobs away from Americans?
Yeah, well, you said illegal immigrants. Okay, illegal immigrants. Anybody who is
or immigrants, if you wanted to say all immigrants.
Anybody who has a substitute level of skills, who's a substitute for an American worker, by definition increases labor supply in that niche and erodes bargaining leverage for American workers. In construction, service industries, places where people illegally have been working, there's no question about it. Now, I know you can say, oh, look at this guy working 18 hours a day for cash under the table. No American would do that job. That's because we have jobs that aren't paying a decent living wage. The work would get done without the illegal workers here. It would be done by fewer American workers being paid far higher wages.
And what about the cost of goods that might result from that workforce? I'm just curious. Do you think Americans are willing to?
What happened to our society that the level of social distance has creeped into the point where we've now become a two-tier society, where those of us driving our Jaguars and our Volvos and our Mercedes look at there's this different class of people who do the dirty work. The stability of our 20th century political experiment was built on the strength of a stable middle class from the 40s, 50s, 60s. The civil rights movement, strong unionization, the narrowing of the gap between wealthy and poor. Engineers and lawyers didn't make that much more than people who were unionized workers in mass production consumption industries. We are now relegating a lot of service jobs and agriculture and food to a form, kind of a modern form of indenture, where people are apparently not expected to be paid a decent living wage, in exchange for their willingness to come here and be exploited. That is. First of all, we're destroying the American middle class. The native-born population with high school degree or less is dropping out of the labor force. We see the people who are most highly impacted by illegal immigration, the least able to defend themselves politically and financially. It has been a sociological disaster, which now, in the wake of this contracting economy with structural unemployment, people desperate for any kind of a job are suddenly finding themselves colliding in whole industries where they don't hire so-called Native American workers anymore. And that's part of why you see this incendiary response arising politically all across the country over an economic model that might have been acceptable during a debt-infused financial bubble that we had in the last decade is no longer sustainable. And we need to go back to the basic principle that we're all connected as Americans together, and that the less educated among us still need to have a tight enough labor supply that employers will have the incentive to provide wages, working conditions, and benefits. And the only way you're going to do that is by controlling the growth of the labor supply.